The cardboard was wet before I even sat down on it. Cold seeped through my jeans, through the 3 layers I'd put on that morning in a bathroom, the size of my old walk-in closet, and I remember thinking, this is stupid, Odalys. This is genuinely stupid. And also, go ahead and stop. 12 hours earlier, I'd been standing in a glass conference room 40 floors above, downtown Tulsa, watching 11 men in better suits than mine nod along to numbers I'd built. From nothing. Odalys Ferris, founder, CEO. The kind of name that gets printed on the cover of business magazines next to words like disruptor and self-made. I'd built a logistics company from a single delivery van and a spreadsheet, and now owned a fleet, a headquarters, and more zeros in my accounts than I ever let myself say out loud, because saying it out loud felt like tempting something. What nobody in that boardroom knew was that 6 months earlier, I'd started doing something I never told my board, never told my therapist, never told anyone, except the woman who does my hair, who I swore to secrecy over foil highlights. Once a season, it disappeared. I took off the rings, left the car, put on clothes from a thrift store in a town I didn't belong to, and I lived rough for a stretch of days. Not for content, not for a documentary crew following behind me, with a boom mic and a safety net, alone. Because there was a version of me, 22 years old, sleeping in a Corolla in a Walmart parking lot in Joplin, who never quite left. And every year that woman gets a little quieter in me, and every year I'd a little more afraid of forgetting her. So I go back and remind myself. That's how I ended up on a strip of sidewalk, outside a shuttered auto parts store in a town called Ray Junction, Missouri. Population barely 4,000, 3 days into eating nothing but a single granola bar and whatever a gas station clerk named Doris slipped me, without ringing it up, looking up at a sky that was starting to spit sleet, and thinking about how quickly a body forgets what it means to be warm. That's when I saw him, a man crouched by a fire, barrel to lots down, feeding it broken pallet wood, one piece at a time, like he was rationing warmth the way you'd ration medicine. He had a kid with him. No, not with him, tucked into him. A boy, maybe 7 years old, wrapped in a coat that had clearly started its life belonging to an adult. The man's name, I'd learn later, was Thaddeus Corliss Meeker, though everyone in Ray Junction just called him Thad, and if you looked at him quick, you'd think laborer, contract, maybe a man between jobs. Look longer, and you saw the particular exhaustion of someone doing math in his head that never balances. Rent math, grocery math, the math of what a 7-year-old needs versus what a father can actually provide. I didn't approach right away. You learn out there that approaching too fast gets you nothing but suspicion, and suspicion is the only currency people have left to protect what little else they've got. So I sat 2 fire barrels down, close enough to bar warmth, far enough to not be an intrusion, and I waited. It was the boy who spoke first. His name was Cassius. Thad told me later he'd named him after his own grandfather, a boxer out of Springfield who never made it big, but never once, in 81 years, backed down from a fight worth having. Cassius walked over to me with the fearless directness only children still have, the directness we spend the rest of our lives sanding down, and he said, "You look cold. You can come by our fire. My dad doesn't mind. I want you to understand something about that moment. I have sat across tables from investors holding 9-figure decisions in their hands. I have negotiated contracts that determined whether 300 families kept their jobs, and none of that prepared me for the particular gut punch of a hungry 7-year-old in a stranger's coat, offering me warmth, like he had any to spare." Thad didn't stop him. He watched his son walk toward a stranger, and he didn't call him back, didn't apologize, didn't perform caution for my benefit. He just made room at the barrel, the way you'd make room for anyone, because that's who he was before circumstance. Rearranged his life into something smaller than it used to be. We didn't talk much that first hour. That's another thing you learn. silence is an emptiness. Out there, it's often the only comfortable thing left. Eventually, Thad asked where I was headed, and I gave him the story I'd rehearsed. The one about losing a warehouse job in Springfield, about a car that died outside Joplin, about family. That wasn't speaking to me. All partially true, in the way lies work best. He nodded like he'd heard versions of it 100 times, because he probably had. And he didn't ask for more, because asking for more felt like a luxury none of us out there could afford. It was maybe 9 that night when he pulled a paper sack from beside him. Inside was a single sandwich bologna, going a little dry at the edges, wrapped in a plastic bag that had clearly been reused more than once, and a small bag of chips that Cassius had already been eyeing for the better part of an hour with the kind of restraint that breaks something in you to witness in a child. Thad split the sandwich into 3 uneven pieces, not equal. His piece was smallest, barely a third, and I watched him do it without a flicker of resentment on his face, like it was simply arithmetic, like a father's portion was always meant to be whatever was left after everyone else had enough. I said I wasn't hungry. It was, at that point, the third lie I'd told him, and the worst one, because my stomach had been folding in on itself since noon. He looked at me the way you look at someone you already know is lying, and he pushed the piece toward me anyway. "You'll eat," he said. Not a question, not even really an offer, just a fact he was stating into existence. Cassius and me were used to stretching things. "You look like you haven't had practice yet." I took the sandwich. I have eaten in restaurants where a single dish cost more than that entire bag of groceries probably did. Restaurants with tasting menus and familiar pairings, and a level of culinary theater I used to think was the peak of what food could mean to a person. I am telling you, with everything in me, that stale bologna sandwich, torn by a stranger's hands, and offered without a second thought, was the finest meal I have eaten in my life, and I have spent every day since trying to understand why, and I still don't have language big enough for the answer. That night, I learned pieces of them, the way you learn a person out there, not all at once, but in fragments offered when the silence got long enough to need filling. Thad had worked construction for 11 years, before a fall-off scaffolding tore up his shoulder badly enough. That lifting became a gamble he couldn't afford to keep losing. His wife, Cassius's mother, a woman named Perpetua, who Thad spoke of like she was still somehow in the room with us, had left 2 years back. Not out of cruelty, he was careful to say, but out of a kind of drowning that had nothing left in it for either of them. She sent birthday cards. That was the whole of it. Now, birthday cards, sometimes with the 5 folded inside, sometimes without. He tried the shelters. Most were full. The ones that weren't full didn't take a father with a young son. Not without paperwork he didn't have. Not without a caseworker he couldn't reach. On a phone with 11 minutes of prepaid minutes left on it. So they'd landed here, behind an auto parts store that used to employ half the town before the highway rerouted business. 40 miles east, in a spot Thad had scouted for its overhang, which cut the wind, and its distance from the road, which cut the visibility, because visibility, he explained, invited the wrong kind of attention as often as the right kind. Cassius fell asleep against his father's side sometime after 10, and Thad kept one hand resting on the boy's shoulder the entire time we talked. An anchor point, I realized, less for Cassius than for himself. A thing to hold on to that reminded him why the math had to keep working out somehow. I asked him quietly why he hadn't sent Cassius to family. There was a pause long enough that I thought I'd trespassed somewhere I shouldn't have. "There's an aunt," he finally said. "My sister, good woman, offered more than once." He looked down at his son's sleeping face. "But he's mine. I know what it looks like, keeping him out here in this. I turn it over every night, whether I'm doing right by him or just being too proud to hand him off. But I look at him, and I think he's not going hungry because I stopped trying. He's not cold because I gave up. Whatever this is, it's me not giving up. And someday, when he's grown, I want him to remember that his father held on Not that his father handed him off the second it got hard. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay there under a coat that used to belong to a woman named Odalys Ferris, who ran a company worth more than this entire town's annual tax revenue, and I thought about the 22-year-old version of me in that Kerala in Joplin, and how nobody split a sandwich with her. Not once, not ever. And how maybe that absence was the exact reason I'd spent every year since building something enormous. Something that could never be hungry again. Something so large it could never be small and unwanted on a sidewalk in the cold. By morning, sleet had turned to a thin, mean rain. Cassius woke up coughing, a wet, rattling sound that made Thad's whole face change, tighten into something I hadn't seen in him yet. Not despair. Something sharper than despair. Fear, with nowhere to go. He's had this cough a week, Thad said, mostly to himself, checking the boy's forehead with the back of his hand, the way parents do. An old instinct, older than words. Urgent cares. 11 miles. I don't have the gas, and I sure as hell don't have what they'd charge without insurance. I want to tell you, I revealed myself right then, that I pulled some hidden card from my coat and fixed everything in one dramatic sweep. That's not what happened, and honestly, I think if I had, it would have cheapened something. Instead, I told him I had a little cash saved, which was true, though I deliberately left most of what I actually had locked in a hotel safe 40 minutes away, keeping only enough on me to stay believable in this world. I was borrowing, gave him what I had. It wasn't much. It was, I'm certain, more than he expected from a stranger who'd eaten his food the night before and offered nothing back. He tried to refuse it 3 times. That's not an exaggeration. 3 separate times, hand half raised, already halfway to pushing it back toward me, before Cassius coughed again. That same wet rattle, and something in Thad's resistance simply broke under the weight of what mattered more than pride. I'll pay you back, he said, and I could hear how much that sentence cost him to say to someone he'd known less than a day. I don't know how yet, but I will. I told him he already had. He looked at me like he didn't understand, and maybe he didn't, not fully, not yet, but I meant it with everything in me. He'd fed a stranger from a sandwich that was already too small for his own family. He'd made room at a fire for someone who could have been anyone, could have been dangerous, could have taken more than she gave. He'd shown his son, without a single lecture about it, what it looks like to hold on to your decency, when decency is the only thing you have left to give away. He had already paid something forward that no amount of money could equal. I left Ray Junction 2 days later. Once I knew Cassius's cough had eased and the fever hadn't come. Once urgent care had ruled out anything worse than a nasty chest cold that responded to the cheap antibiotics, I'd also, quietly, arranged to have covered without ever putting my real name near the transaction. I told Thad I had a cousin upstate who might have work for me. Another lie. The last one, promised myself, and this time, kept that promise. Because what came after didn't need lies anymore. Here's what I didn't tell him before I left. Because I wasn't ready yet. Because some gifts need distance and quiet before you can give them without it becoming about the giver instead of the given. 3 weeks later, a woman from a foundation with a name that meant nothing recognizable because I'd built it specifically to mean nothing recognizable, contacted a small nonprofit in Ray Junction that helps families access housing, rent covered, first year, on a 2-bedroom just off Miller Street, 6 blocks from the elementary school. A part-time position at a logistics distribution hub. The kind of light work that wouldn't punish an old shoulder injury, with hours that let a father be home for dinner. Medical coverage that would mean no more math about which cough was bad enough to risk urgent care. Thad called the number listed on the paperwork, confused, certain there'd been some mistake. Some other meeker somewhere who actually deserved this. I let 3 more weeks pass before I answered that call myself. And when I did, when I told him who I really was, when I told him about the boardroom and the company, and the fleet of trucks and the woman he'd known only as a stranger sharing his fire, there was a silence on the line so long I thought he'd hung up. "You ate my food," he finally said. And his voice had something cracked in it I hadn't heard. Even that night, with Cassius coughing beside him. "You let me think you needed it." "I did need it," I told him. And it was the truest thing I'd said to him from the very first night. "Just not the way you thought." He didn't ask me for anything else. Not once, not ever. In all the calls and the one visit I eventually made in daylight in my own name, driving my own car up to that little house on Miller Street to watch Cassius run across a yard that was actually finally his. Thad didn't ask why I'd done it. Didn't ask what I got out of it. Didn't perform the kind of grateful speeches people sometimes think you want to hear. He just stood on that porch, his son's laughter carrying across a lawn that used to belong to someone else's better luck. And he said the only thing that mattered. "I'd have shared that sandwich even if I'd known who you were. I want you to know that it wasn't for anything. It was just what you do." I believe him completely. That's the part I think about most, late at night, back in that glass office 40 floors up, surrounded by things that cost more than most people see in a year. Not the house I gave, not the job, not the coverage. The sandwich. A man with almost nothing looked at a stranger and decided, without hesitation, without calculation, that there was still enough of himself to give away. That decency doesn't wait until you can afford it. That the poorest hands I have ever eaten from were the most generous hands I have ever known. I still go back every season, not to Ray Junction anymore. That part of my life stayed finished, the way the best chapters know when to end. Somewhere else, always somewhere new, always alone, always cold at first, before I remember how to be warm again in the old way. The way that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with who's willing to sit beside you at the fire. Because I learned something on that sidewalk that no business degree, no boardroom, no balance sheet had ever managed to teach me. Wealth isn't the size of what you have left over. It's the size of what you're still willing to give away when you have nothing left over at all. Thad Meeker taught me that with a torn piece of bread and a portion smaller than his own son's. And I have spent every year since trying whatever quiet ways I can to be even half as rich as that man was on the coldest night of my life.
True wealth is not measured in money, it measured in what you are willing to share when you have almost nothing left. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comment what it meant to you.